6:30 on Monday, August 24th, 2020. I am Katrina Ruggles, the Vice President of the Winton Woods Board of Education, standing in for President Dr. Viola Johnson for tonight's meeting. And I now call the Winton Woods City School Board of Education meeting to order. First, I want to welcome back our Warrior families, staff, and communities. In an attempt to try to get back to some level of normalcy for our board meetings, you will notice that we are doing something a little bit different tonight. We're doing a blended model with some of the board members here present, and we also have two of our board members, Mr. Hvac Jeopardy and Dr. Cupoletti, who are joining us virtually. So with that said, we'll move on to item number 1.02, and if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Seymour, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Ruggles,
Present.
Mr. Birdie,
Present.
Dr. Cupoletti,
Present.
Mr. McGowan's,
Present.
and Dr. Johnson's absent.
Seeing that there's no special recognitions tonight on the agenda, we're supposed to move into recess after the special recognition, but since we don't have any tonight, we will move right on to item 3.01, public comments. Do we have any? And it doesn't look like we have any. So seeing that there are no public comments, we will move into agenda item 4.01, comments for the Winton Woods Teachers Association. And I believe we have Ms. Baker on the virtual side of things. Ms. Baker, you have the floor.
Good evening, board and administration. WWTA would like to thank you for the extra days of professional development to hone our technology skills and to collaborate with our teams. We feel that today was a success, even with the tech issues that we faced. We also would like to encourage parents to be patient as we work through some of the tech glitches, and we appreciate all of the help that parents have also provided in helping the younger students to log on. We would encourage all parents and students to continue to reach out to the teachers for help as we work through this unprecedented time together. Today was truly a great day to be a warrior. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Thank you for your comments. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 4.02, the Ohio Association of Public School Employees. Do we have a representative from OPSE who would like to speak?
She's there. I see her name. Shonda.
Okay. Ms. Ferguson, we have Shonda Ferguson. You have the floor.
Shonda, unmute. Shonda, can you unmute yourself, please?
Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
We can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for acknowledging OC. We're glad to be here tonight. Thank you for making this opportunity available for us to do it virtual. I just want to say thank you for allowing OC to take part in our meeting tonight, and I'm wishing everyone a healthy and safe school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson, and thank you, Ms. Baker, for you both showing up. It's very important for us to have, to hear from both organizations, so I thank you for showing up tonight. The next item on the agenda is 5.0, which is the approval of the minutes as presented. Board, unless you see any necessary changes to these minutes, a motion would be in order.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
It has been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions for discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you please call that vote?
Mrs. Ruggless,
Aye.
Mr. Birdie,
Aye.
Dr. Cupoletti,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan.
Aye.
The vote passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is 6.01, which is our treasurer's report of the financial statements for July 2020. Mr. Seymour, you have the floor.
Of course, we just started a new year, and the expenditures and the revenues are skewed as one might expect. But I'll review what we did for the month of July. Our revenues for the month of July were $8.1 million. Most of that was real estate, and some of it was state foundation. Our real estate advances are coming in slower. As you know, they were given extended time to pay tax bills. So real estate tax collections will be slower, but we don't know any pending delinquencies or changes to that as of now. We spent $3.8 million for the month of June in the general fund. All funds have approximately $46.4 million. $21 million is the general fund. $4.6 million is the building fund, and $25 million in classroom facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. With no objections to what was presented, let the financial statement for the month of July 2020 be submitted for audit. Well, does anybody have any questions regarding it first? Seeing as none, let the financial statements for the month of July 2020 be submitted for audit. The next item on our agenda is the treasurer's recommendation of investments for July 2020. Mr. Seymour, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm asking you to accept the investment report for the month of July. There was $57 million invested. We only earned $31,000 in interest for the month, but a lot of that varies based upon maturities of the investments. As you know, some months we can have $200,000 or $300,000. So the general fund for the month of June was $17,900, and the building funds $13,400.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Board, a motion is in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the investment report as presented.
I'll second it.
Who did you second that? Okay. It has been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions for discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you please call the vote?
Mrs. Ruggless,
Aye.
Mr. Birdie,
Aye.
Dr. Cupoletti,
Aye.
Mr. McGowan.
Aye.
The vote passes unanimously. So now we'll move on to Section 8, the superintendent's recommendations. Please note that items 8.01 through 8.04 are recommendations and no board action will be taken by vote. However, there will be time after each of the items for the board members to ask questions of Mr. Smith. With that said, the next item on the agenda is 8.01, reports of the superintendent, which is the summer school report. Mr. Smith, you have the floor.
Yes, Madam President, Vice President, excuse me. Ms. Roselle and Mr. Dixon, as well as Ms. Harrison Fowler. Are you guys ready for the summer school piece? Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adi Dixon. I'm the assistant principal at Winton Woods Middle School.
Good evening. I am Kelly Roselle, the Dean of Students at the Intermediate School. This evening, we're just going to give you an overview of our summer programming. As a result of COVID, clearly we did not do our third grade guarantee work, so there was no MAP testing and state assessment over the course of the summer, so the data is empty. We did not do any of that testing for the summer. When we look at our summer programs and our virtual experience for grades K through 6, ESL, we had 15 students registered and prepared to attend, and we had 11 to complete the program successfully. Second grade, there were a large number of students, 35, and our teacher was able to maintain a consistent attendance of 19 students. In third grade, there were 27 students, and 22 of those were able to successfully complete the program. Fourth grade, 15 registered, and all 15 successfully completed the program. And fifth grade, 18 registered, with 12 able to successfully complete. Overall number of students registered in our programs was 110, and 79 were able to complete the program.
Thank you, Ms. Roselle. In regards to our secondary programs, in the same vein of what Ms. Roselle said, there were no end-of-course exams for high school, grades 9 through 12. In regards to Algebra 1, which is a repeat credit course, these are for grades 9 through 11, there were a total of 49 students who were signed up for the course with a course completion rate of 40%. In regards to virtual credit recovery, this is for grades 10 through 12. The number of students signed up were 47, and the amount of credits earned were at 40. In regards to the middle school, we have course recovery for grade 7. We had a total of 42 students signed up, 35 of which earned course recovery in 7th grade for an 83% passing rate. In regards to course recovery for 8th grade, we had 28 students signed up, 21 of which were able to gain course recovery for a percentage completion of 75%. Which brings us to our recommendations.
Okay, before I go into the recommendations, there are a couple things I want to say about that virtual experience. We were one of the only programs in this area for summer, and we thought that was very, very important and relevant under the circumstances because a lot of people struggled with the spring and COVID coming on with no preparation. So it was important for us to do something this summer to kind of gauge and see where we would go with this whole virtual process. So it was good for us to be able to get out there and do a little bit with the summer in preparation for the fall. So we have to really, really commend those professionals that stuck it out with us over the virtual because it was a learning process for the adults and the young people. So at the end, we can definitely say that we did very well under the circumstances, and it put us in a better position to move forward this fall. Recommendations for K to 6 would be making sure that concessions are made for those students with disabilities like we always do. Continue to provide additional support for those ESL students. It would be ideal, but I don't know if this would be possible, to maintain and manage class sizes less than 12. Professional development for the virtual best practices, because teachers were a little uneasy about what the expectations were, but we had to just let them know we are all learning. There's a learning curve. There are things that we need to discuss, and we can make changes as we go. And they were willing to do that, and we were all very successful with it. And we also probably need to consider increasing hours for teachers for their planning and additional communication with parents.
Thank you, Ms. Roselle. Going along with that spirit of professional development for the secondary level, we did have probably 6 weeks or so with virtual learning before we went into summer programming, but our teachers, when polled, did say that they needed some more best practices and some more development in the virtual field. Another recommendation for grades 7 through 8 is the use of a universal screener for placement and tracking. This conversation came up mostly within our ELA classes as trying to figure out what were the major standards that we should focus on within our time with our students. And as well, seconding Ms. Rozelle's recommendation of increased hours for teacher planning and communication. From the 9 through 12 grade level bands, some of the recommendations are begin advertising earlier. This will allow for earlier sign-up times and thus more time to reconfirm with parents. Return to the first week of June start dates. It was difficult to manage once counselors were off duty. And then finally, remote summer school was challenging to keep students engaged. If at all safe, Algebra 1 should be face-to-face. That is the conclusion of our presentation.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Question for Dean Rozelle.
Okay, go ahead.
Under K through 6, item 3, it says greater than 12 students.
We meant
Did you mean
less
that, or did
Less
you
than.
mean less than?
Less than, we need less than 12. It's easier to manage for those teachers, so less than 12 would be practical. But if it's not possible, then hey, we would have to do what we did.
You have the greater than sign.
Okay. We have the greater than sign. We can correct that.
Yeah, I think it's two pieces. You may have the greater than sign, but your presentation did clearly say less than.
Yes.
Okay. I do have a question. The students that were in the summer program, I would like to see a transition plan. I'm sure you guys already have something in mind, but I would like to see a transition plan of how that information is articulated to the teacher of record for the fall. So there should be a transition plan, how well these students did in the summer session, exactly where they are. I know Dr. Martin and Dr. Ragland have been working on tracking documents with you, Ms. Rozelle.
Yes.
And so if we could use those same tracking documents, instead of going back reinventing where these kids are, even though MAP would have done that for us, since we didn't have the MAP data for the summer, I think it would really be a great plan to use that data that we already have so students can get started right away.
We can do that, and this time what we did was, instead of waiting until the end of the session,
Yes.
we did weekly progress, so the kids knew where they were, and it wasn't all over the place, so they kind of had a gauge and a monitor of what their progress as they went on. So we can get that information together and forward it to those teachers.
And I know the association has been working with the administration about morale and mental health and attitudes and all the positive things. So I like to attribute you and Mr. Dixon for kind of creating this certificate. Can you tell a little bit about the certificate?
Those students that were able to successfully complete, even though they weren't there physically, we made arrangements to have certificates designed for all of those students. A great deal of those were delivered by myself. I did deliver them, and some of the teachers also delivered those certificates because we wanted the kids to feel like it was really, really worth your while. This wasn't busy time or a wasted effort. We wanted them to feel like we do recognize the energy and the time that you put into your studies at this time.
Okay, so some students have just made contact with me, and they would like to know that in the summer, in the future, they would like those certificates for them as well. So this is a new tradition that you've started, so thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Rozelle and Mr. Oh, Ms. Rozelle.
I'm sorry. Not a question, but a statement. I see on the bottom where you talked about if at all safe, Algebra 1 should be face-to-face, and I still get chills thinking about algebra, so I definitely can relate to that. Were there any other classes that you felt maybe should have been face-to-face other than algebra?
I think that the virtual format worked very well for the grade band 7 through 8. I know that Algebra 1 is a very difficult course for students, and it needs, the recommendation was face-to-face from the high school counselor and from the high school principal.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Ms. Rozelle, you actually answered my question before I even got to it, which was, what were some of the challenges that you saw, and I think it was captured in the recommendations to make it better. But I think for those who are listening to us and virtually, or who will look at this later, I think it's important to share with them why the testing did not occur.
Since they were not going to be doing the testing, we didn't think it was fair or necessary for us to put the students through that. That was an additional, we thought, stressor for those kids. Why would we have them go through all of that because that's a high anxiety piece, and our elementary people can tell you that. So it was kind of a breathing time for us to say, hey, the kids can take a breather, step back. The only downside of that is, in this process of moving forward, that's information that they're still going to be held responsible for. So it puts us in a position where we've got to figure out where do we feel and how do we fill those gaps. But I'm confident that we can get those gaps filled and those young people will be prepared as we move forward.
And testing was suspended, correct?
Yes, it was suspended.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Dixon and Ms. Roselle, and Mr. Smith, you have the floor for item 8.02.
Yes, Madam Vice President, 8.02 is going to be brought back to the board next month because students are still currently enrolling. So we still have some open enrolled in situations that have not been cleared up, so we did not want to give you numbers that were not accurate.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move right on to item 8.03, and the next item is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Part B, budget presentation and public input. Oh, wow, look at that. Okay, Mr. Denny.
Good evening,
Good evening.
board members and Superintendent Smith. My name is Tanya Bray. I'm Director of Student Services for Winton City Schools. I will be presenting the Special Education Report Card for the IDEA report. Just a little information about 1 in 5 people have a learning disability. 1 million children ages 6 to 21 have some form of a learning disability and receive some form of special education services while in school. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is the federal special education law that requires public schools to serve the learning needs of students with disabilities. IDEA requires that schools provide special education services to eligible students per the student's individualized education plan, and that's called an IEP, what people know as the IEP. The Special Education Report Card, this is an annual rating for every public school district in Ohio. And just keep in mind, a lot of the data that I'm going to present is pretty consistent to last year's, only because of the suspended testing that we had. A lot of the data well, let me back up. So we do have a lag year. So the data that should be reported should be for school year 2018-2019. Some of that data is present today, but most of it will not be updated until September or early October of this year. The Ohio Department of Education uses final data submitted through the Education Management Information System, otherwise known as the EMIS. The data results in one of the 4 ratings for Winton Woods. We are right now at needs intervention, and that is due to some of the indicators that we have not met over time in past years. And I will just quickly review some of the indicators that, that we are to report and that we are responsible for. Let me go back. So as you see, the special education rating, most of the data, again, was collected in 2017-18. Again, a lot of this information will not be updated until end of September, early October for the 2018-2019 school year, because we are in a lag year. So indicators 6 through 12 are preschool, and the data that was updated was indicators 7A, 7B, 7C, and from last year's report, it was to be determined. And those indicators for 2018, 2019, we did not meet those indicators. These are preschool age students. It's very hard to show a lot of progress for kiddos who are 3 years old and to meet those standards. But as you know, we are a 5-star rated preschool. By the time they exit our program, when they enter, of course, they're pretty low, and there are a lot of things that they need to learn in order to move on to school age. But knowing, again, that we are a 5-star rated preschool, they are ready to begin kindergarten. And again, this information is consistent to last year's data, but these are the indicators that we look heavily at for the district. Again, this information should be updated end of September, early October. Graduation by standard requirements, dropout rate, secondary transition, post-school outcomes. And again, this information for indicator 8, that was updated as of to date. We did not meet that indicator. What that means is facilitated parent involvement are surveys to parents. So we were looked at or scored by how many surveys that were returned by parents. And since we did not meet the required number of surveys received back by parents, we did not meet that indicator. And that concludes my report for special education.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Smith. My name is Adrienne Martin. I am the Director of Teaching and Learning for Pre-K 6, and I am going to go over the allocations for the federal IDEA initial allocation. For the fiscal year 2019, it was $926,691.28. For fiscal year 2020, it was $947,689.29. That is almost a $21,000 difference in increase from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20. The IDEA allocations, this is kind of trend data in regards to the allocation amount per year. And if you notice from the initial onset of this fiscal year of 08, and then look at the fiscal year of 20 and 21, or 21, again, is now $947,689 for the initial allocation. There will be additional allocations that are presented to the district over the course of the school year. Now we'll look at the FY 2020 IDA budget by function. If you look at the instruction, which is the green, it's $737,802. If you look at the support services, which is the blue, $106,158. Governance and admin would be $84,117. And if we look at non-pubs, it's $54,891. And looking at the FY 2020 IDA budget by object, that includes salaries, retirement and fringe benefits, purchase services, and other. In salaries, we have $595,051. Retirement and fringe benefits, we have $226,868. For purchase services, we have $161,049. And in other, we have $25,292. When looking at this in regards to the percent of how the funds are spent, we have 58% in instruction. In support services, we have, I do believe that was 21%. It's, for some reason, it's not up there. For governance, it's 10%, and for non-pubs, it's 9%. If we look at the IDA budget by object and look at the salaries, the purchase service, and the retirement fringe benefits, in salaries, we have 61% of the funds utilized. For retirement and fringe benefits, we have 23 of the funds utilized. And for purchase services, we have 16% of the funds being utilized. At this time, are there any questions or input from the public?
Dr. Martin, I know that the board may wonder why do we give such a comprehensive report. We are required by law to do so that people know how IDEA funds are spent. So that's a report that actually is something that we have to do every year like every other district. That's why we have to go into it with detail.
Yes, that's correct.
Board, are there any questions on this presentation? I have one question, and it's hard for me to see. We'll figure this out. We're learning. We're in a learning curve. But one of the things is that Ms. Bray, you said that there will be some information that will be updated in September or October. So will you come back and share that updated information
Yes,
with
of
us at a
course.
later time?
Yes.
And also, you are absolutely right. The preschool, that is one of the things that I am most proud of. I have a preschool background, teaching Head Start in New York, and I know the impact that it can have, and I think it's very important that our community understands that we have a five-star preschool and five-star rated Step Up to Quality preschool program, which is very important because as our community begins to utilize that service,
Yes.
and we know that our children are doing better who go through our preschool program, and we're able to cultivate them and bring them into the warrior nation in our academics. It's very promising. So I really want to get the word out that we do have that excellent service. But another question for both Mr. Smith and you all, I'm just overwhelmed with how much you all have had to do as it relates to COVID-19, moving to virtual testing, no testing, trying to make sure that students don't fall between the cracks. So I know that there's some indicators that have been missed or not met. And given the challenging times, do you all have a plan to, how do we swing back and recover? And I don't think that there's an easy answer to that, just because so much is happening, and I think the landscape of education has just changed so much. But if you could answer that,
I
or
can answer that.
Dr. Martin.
Yeah, I can answer that. So one of the things that you heard during the presentation is our students come in with a variety of skills. Some of them have deficiencies, and one of the things that we are very proud of, once they get to that preschool level, those skills are actually almost eradicated, meaning that it's cleaned up. Kids are performing at such incredible levels. That's why we have the 5-star rating. So one of the things that you may want to do, Dr. Martin and Mrs. Bray, is the next presentation that you're going to come back to the board to give an overview, talk about some of these bullet particulars that run through the preschool program to get them ready. And I think that would really kind of give the board a real view of how kids are prepared for the next level.
Yes, and to answer your question, Mrs. Regulus, in terms of virtual learning and the blended and coming back to traditional, the plan is to bring our students with disabilities back to the blended or a traditional setting, whatever that may look like first. We know that those students are very vulnerable and they really need that assistance and that instruction. So we know the challenges that the parents are having at home. They are meeting virtually. We still have all of our related services staff in place, the OTs, the PTs, the speech and language pathologists. They are still working with our students with disabilities, but the next step is looking at seeing the young ones, our preschoolers, kindergartners, and our students with disabilities transitioning back whatever way that we come back, be it blended or traditional.
I think it's very important. My hat's off to the teaching and learning and to you, Ms. Bray, because there's so much that goes into making sure there's so many different special populations, like what are their needs over here, what are the students with disabilities needs, and I don't think anybody really, a lot of times lawmakers, try to do the best that they can as they're making different rules, but there's unintended consequences, and I understand that we have to be safe and we have to make sure that our whole system is healthy, but now it's like, how do we, move at a pace to make sure that everyone is being served appropriately.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you.
No other comments? We will move on to item 8.04, which is the facilities update, which is very exciting because these buildings are really showing, they're shaping our curb appeal out here. So.
Yes, Madam Vice President, Mr. Denny will come up and do the presentation. But just before he gets ready, I think Mr. Denny and I are ready for Hvac Jeopardy, because there are some new standards and some new terms that we've been toying around with that we've been learning as we go. And you guys are going to hear about the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, which is ASHRAE. You're also going to hear about the this real exciting HVAC ventilating system, MERV, which is a filtering system. And MERV stands for the Minimum Efficiency Reporting Value. So usually things in our locale are at a MERV rating of 8, and many of them are below that. I know our current buildings don't meet that standard, correct, Mr. Denny? But we're going to, Mr. Denny's going to go into this whole efficiency conversation about it. Usually the hour meetings that we have once a week are pretty interesting. I think the last meeting Mr. Denny and I had about HVAC was about 42 hours. So I appreciate your commitment and your work and your dedication to making sure that the buildings are safe and efficient, because that's the new trend now. How is your HVAC system and how is your filtration system moving, especially with new buildings? So Mr. Denny, you're up.
Thanks very much, Mr. Smith. Good evening, board. Good evening, everyone. Anyone tuning in out there tonight as well. We appreciate you spending some time with us in our relaunched blended board meeting format. So I will touch just briefly on just a quick facilities update. And again, this is for folks that maybe aren't aware, if you're tuning in at home especially. You can get this update actually every week, so I would encourage you to do that. And just briefly, the way you can find access to the weekly blitz, and this is the weekly blitz. It's a bit about the K-6, the new K-6 as well as the new 712. Is you can just log on to our district website. That's www.wintonwoods.org. And you want to go to the bottom of the screen. Thank you. And toward the bottom, you will see a construction crane. So that's a little bit of a tell. And it says construction updates. You click that, and it will take you to the latest weekly blitz. There's a lot going on. So I encourage you just to check that out and keep you up to date on what's happening with the buildings. As Ms. Ruglas pointed out, it's greatly enhancing our curb appeal. We've got a lot going on. We are about 5 months and change from completion, and the buildings are still on schedule. We still have contingency funds remaining, so we're still on budget. And it's really exciting to get into the buildings. I was able to get in this past Thursday and had a chance to kind of look firsthand at what's happening. And it is really exciting, so couldn't be more pleased. You've got some photos here of sidewalk construction you can see going in at the K6 along the new drive. Paint is going in, flooring products are going in, and we actually got the learning stairs poured at the K6, which is pretty exciting as well. So, and lighting has been installed. So it's a very electric, alive space, and I think it's going to be a great learning environment for students and a great working environment for teachers. And to that end, as Mr. Smith pointed out, he had asked me this evening to speak a little bit about air quality, especially indoor air quality. It's extremely important these days with the battle against the virus. There's a lot of people asking questions about that, and so I wanted to highlight some of the features and capabilities of the new facilities. They are a quantum leap forward from where we are now in terms of the facilities we currently occupy. The new facilities under construction have the ability to deliver high-quality indoor air supply. And our maintenance team and facilities team members have met with local building officials. We've met with local health officials. We've met with outside contractors. We're currently working with Siemens right now on our existing buildings because we want to elevate that experience and that air quality to the greatest degree we can. But we've also, as Mr. Smith pointed out, wanted to make sure that our new facilities were in accordance with ASHRAE, as well as the CDC and health department guidelines for ventilation. So to that end, CMTA, our engineering firm that works with SHP, our lead design firm, has passed along some of these capabilities, and I just thought I'd highlight them for you this evening. One of the biggest features is called the DOAS unit. It's DOAS. That's a distributed outside air service. And what it does is it pulls outside air, fresh air, in a continual basis in large volumes, big gulps of air, and pulls it into the building and sends it directly into the occupant spaces. So that indoor air is 100% supplied by fresh outdoor air. Exhaust air is vented out, and then recirculated air passes through what Mr. Smith alluded to, which is a MERV 13 filter. MERV 13 is, and MERV again stands for, it's a pretty interesting acronym. We love acronyms in education and construction, probably as much as the military. Minimum efficiency reporting value. And basically what that is, it's a 1 to 20 scale, where 1 to 5 might be what you'd have in your garage, and a 6 to, say, maybe 7 is what you might have in a typical home. And an 8 is a decent commercial grade filter. When you get to a 13, you're actually approaching high quality commercial grade filters that can filter down to the viral level. So it will actually filter out about 80 to 90, actually over 90% of anything 1 micron or larger. And a micron is I think a millionth of a millimeter, so thousandth of a millimeter, excuse me. But anything greater than 16, is a HEPA filter. If you've heard that before, that's a high efficiency particulate air filter. And there's even something called an ULPA filter, which that would be something you might encounter in a hospital. So these filters can pull out bacteria and have the capability of filtering out viruses, which is why we're excited about that. The HVAC system is also controlled by, if you've heard of IoT, the Internet of Things, it's controlled by a BAS, which is a building automation system. That actually is software that can control the amount of air flowing in and out of the building. It monitors temperature, humidity, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide as well, and then can, in real time, make adjustments based on that programming. If it's necessary to flush the building or have run schedules running longer, that can happen. So again, you're enhancing the fresh air into the space, which, as we know, is important for health considerations. Finally, the HVAC systems and the air handlers can also help supply increased amounts of air circulation. Right now, they would be programmed to provide the code required amounts that's prescribed, but they can also be programmed to provide a lot more, which is something we'd be looking to do in this current age in which we find ourselves. So that's a little bit about the buildings and the new capabilities and filtration, and we're excited about what's coming. That concludes that portion.
Board, are there any questions for Mr. Denny or Mr. Smith?
I have one for Mr. Denny.
Yes, sir.
So the new buildings, it's recommended that we not open windows. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so I guess one way to look at it is that the ventilation system in the new facilities is that sensitive. If you open the buildings, what you're doing is compromising the pressure test,
Exactly.
the pressurization of the building. So it's designed to be overpressured. In fact, before the building can be turned over to us, one of the major milestones we have to go through is what they call a building pressurization test. And if the building doesn't pass that, they're going to go back and find where that air got out, because that is what really makes the system run properly. And so the windows are actually inoperable. They are built that way. And they're built that way on the basis of the strength of the HVAC system. So,
Very good.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great question.
Board, are there any questions?
Okay.
Well, I'll just say what a blessing it is to be in a position to have new buildings with such a high-quality system, especially the mom in me comes out with, what's happening with the COVID-19 as well as an impending flu season. So we'll be in good shape once these buildings open up. So thank you for your report.
Madam Vice President,
Yes.
there's one other comment. I know that when I brought the conversation to the board years ago about distributed dining, it really wasn't about distributed dining. It was about increasing our square feet and not using large cafeterias that were underutilized like this one, and we only use it for so many times a day. When you look at what's happened now with COVID-19, we are absolutely thrilled that distributed dining will be part of who we are, because that's where students are eating now. Students are moving all across the country. They're shutting down large cafeterias, and moving to small dinette type environments in their classroom. And I'd like to thank Mr. Day for doing a little pilot for us last year at the intermediate building where food was actually distributed to the students. It cut down on time away from the class. It actually also cut down this conversation about bullying and harassment, and kids just kind of enjoying each other's company in smaller settings. So the idea about distributed dining, Mr. Denny and I wondered, when we put that into play and the new buildings we're going to have distributed dining, would it make us heroes on this education front, or would we be thrown out with the wash? And so right now it looks like we were on target. Other districts are talking about distributed dining, so we just wanted to make sure that people understood that the distributed dining concept is actually kind of going through the rest of the United States, because people are talking about congregating with large groups of people. This small dining, intimate setting is absolutely best. So there you go.
Thank
I
you.
forgot about that. I think that, with these buildings opening up, I think we're going to find that we're going to be in a good position in a lot of respects as it relates to our current context with COVID-19. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's recommendations, 9.01 personnel schedules.
Yes, Madam Vice President. The recommendation is to approve the personnel schedules as presented. Schedule A, resignations. Schedule B, personnel, which is for certificated. Schedule C, personnel employment, support staff. Schedule D, personnel employment, certificated, uncertificated, including extra duties. And finally, Schedule E, leaves.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Board, a motion is in order to approve schedules A, B, C, D, and E.
I make a motion to approve the personnel schedules as presented.
Board, a second is needed.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Birdie. It has been motioned and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, will you call that vote?
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye. Yeah.
Mr. Birdie?
Aye.
Dr. Cupoletti?
Threw me off.
Aye.
Mr. McGowan?
Aye.
The vote passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 10.01, Board of Education reports, and the legislative report will be by Mr. Smith. Will you please share your update?
Yes, Madam Vice President. There are three major issues that are happening in our state. And of course, number one is Ed Choice. And right now, Ed Choice, there are eligible buildings that they're talking about for Ed Choice. There are over 1,200 eligible buildings for Ed Choice if they stay on their current path. House Bill 197 passed earlier before the pandemic, but there's been a general hold on vouchers being awarded for this year. So stay tuned. Without further legislative action, the law will revert back to House Bill 197. And the second one is the OHSAA waivers. The Ohio School Athletic Association recommends but will not mandate that schools ask student athletes and their parents, guardians, to sign liability waivers before allowing to participate in sports during the COVID-19 pandemic. So this has come from the interim director, Bob Goldring, and from his seat, it's not a mandate, but it's a recommendation that they sign a waiver. And then the final one that's really on the radar is the sports spectator caps at indoor and outdoor venues. So the maximum number of individuals allowed to gather at outdoor sports and venues in Ohio is lesser of 1,500 or 15% of the facility's fixed seating capacity, according to the Ohio Department of Health. For indoor venues, the number drops to the lesser of 300 spectators for 15%, which is about, we're talking about for a football game, 125 people per side. So what we've done, I gave Mrs. Denny, I met with her about, parents want to see their kids participate, and how do we make that happen? And she reached out to Waycross, our great friends that are taping this segment tonight, and they have made the arrangements that they can stream all these games live, with the exception of two that our other colleagues would be streaming those games. So when parents can't make the event because of capacity, because of COVID and safety and the 6-foot distancing issue, they'll still be able to see their children participate, which is a good piece for us. And we don't have upset parents wondering, how did they do, how did they play? And I know Waycross has been streaming our games live for years, but it's always a time-delayed event. It's usually not right at the time the event is taking place. So thank you, Mrs. Denning, for reaching out. Thank you for Waycross for making the arrangements so that our parents can actually enjoy the games from the luxury of their homes. I know, Mr. McGowan, if you are a fair weather fan, I believe you're not, but I know that there have been times where it's been 15 degrees and I wish I could be streaming it from somewhere else, but I am a dedicated warrior to the end, so I stay at all games from beginning to end, no matter what the elements may bring. I'm sure you're that same way, sir.
Well, to answer your question, as long as the weather's not too cold, I am a fair weather fan also.
Those are the more important updates right now, Mrs. Ruggles.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next item on the agenda is item 10.02, Great Oaks Career and Technical Center Report. Mr. Birdie, you have the floor.
Yeah, I sent to the board members, Mr. Smith and Mr. Seymour, this morning my report. It included some board highlights from the meeting here in early August.
provider's update on their first week of classes, a legislative report, and an ACTE report, which is the Association for Career Technical Education report done by one of the board members. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me if you've not had a chance to look at it. And once you do look at it, please give me a call.
Mr. Birdie, I do have one question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
There's been some conversation, and I know that Mr. Snyder has worked diligently on making sure that his campus is open and ready for students. But I do know, at least this is what I'm hearing, that their classes are online with the exception of the technical things that they have to do with computers or equipment. Can you just enlighten us and just give me some additional information on how that's working?
I mean, my understanding is it's working well. They went with a blended type of schedule. So for the labs and the certification hours that are needed by the students, they've got classes scheduled, for half the students on Mondays and Thursdays and the other half on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then anything that's just academic related can be done remotely.
Okay. So I know that we have a lot of students, at least 100 plus, that attend Scarlett, and I wanted their parents to kind of hear it from us. I know they've heard it from Mr. Snyder, but I wanted them to hear it from us how their children are being educated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board members, are there any questions for Mr. Birdie? Well, actually, he said you can email him, so thank you, Mr. Birdie, for sending that information out. The next item on the agenda is 11.01. Board motions, recommendations. I'm not aware of any recommendations or motions at this time. So we can move on to our next item on the agenda, which is 12.01, comments from the members of the Board of Education and the Superintendent and Treasurer. We will start with our also talkative Mr. Seymour.
I have nothing, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you, Mr. Seymour. Mr. Birdie.
No, I'll just say thank you to the teachers and the staff and the parents and the students. And, I wish I could be there in person. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was out of town last week and felt that caution was the better decision at this point, and I'm hanging out at home and just making sure that there were no issues with my travel. I don't believe there are. So everybody stay healthy, stay safe. As Mr. Smith said before, the distributed dining decision seems to be somewhat prophetic at this point, but the original intent was space utilization, and I think that that's going to work out well as we get the new buildings up and running. So looking forward to that. So thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Birdie, and thank you for your consideration of of everybody's health in choosing to do a virtual, have a virtual presence. Dr. Cupoletti.
Yes, I'm sorry I'm not there with you in person, but I do want to agree with everything Mr. Birdie said, but I especially want to congratulate Mr. Denny for his work on the air handling system, which will be essential for keeping our buildings safe in this COVID pandemic. So thank you, Mr. Denny.
Thank you, Dr. Cupoletti, and I agree. Thank you, Mr. Denny and Mr. Smith, for securing such a high-powered solution for us for our air handlers, or however, I don't know the words for that, but HVAC. Mr. McGowans.
Well, first I'd like to thank the staff, the administration, and the teachers. What a wonderful job they do in a really, really tough environment today. So I'm just proud to be a part of this. I want to thank Waycross. I think it's so important that the parents are going to be able to see their kids play. Being a sports guy myself, I know that's really important. And last but not least, I'd like to give a shout out to our fearless leader, Dr. Johnson. Can't wait till you get back, and we'll hold the fort down till you get back.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. And Mr. Smith?
Well, I do have one piece that I'd like to read, but before that, we've made a decision. When I became the superintendent, I believe that the association, the Teachers Association, met once a quarter, and we thought that it was too important to stretch information that long because a lot can happen in 10 weeks. And so we made the transition to once a month. And with the connection with the association as well as the administrators, we're moving it now to bi-weekly. There's so much information that needs to be disseminated that we think it's very important to make sure that we get that information out. And the good part about it is the week that we're not meeting with the association, that's the week that we're going to be meeting with OPSI, because they're very, very important to what happens in our district. Their members have been very, very dedicated and committed all along, so we want to make sure that every other week. And then there will be times when there's going to be a major transition, we'll be meeting with both groups hopefully at the same time, and then the conversation will be, with the board as well. So here is the conversation about things that are coming up in the future. As we approach relevant conversations regarding the plans to reopen schools, it is imperative that we engage all students, parents, staff, and community members. On July 29th, the Ohio Department of Health published the results of the effects of COVID-19 in Hamilton County. This published document is titled Summary of Alert Indicators. Based on the color-coded county alert levels, Hamilton County has transitioned from level 3, red, to level 2, orange. Level 3 means public emergency, very high exposure and spread, limit activities as much as possible, follow all current health orders, and out of 10 indicators, level 3 usually has 4 or 5. We've transitioned now to level orange, which is public emergency, increased exposure and spread, exercise high degree of caution, and follow all current health orders. And out of 10 indicators, orange is usually met with 2 or 3. The Ohio Department of Health, along with the Center for Disease Control, attributes the decline of many people in Hamilton County practicing social distancing. The community recognizes that wearing a mask is essential to minimizing the spread of COVID-19. Furthermore, remembering to wash hands routinely was essential as well. Winton City Schools will begin the school year for all students on a virtual platform beginning today, Monday, August 24th. In the event that the district remains in the orange category or transitions to yellow, a conversation will be held with parents as well as members of the community to discuss educational options. Each week, there will be in-depth conversations with the board with the goal of developing more inclusive future plans. The conversations will be facilitated with the clear intent of providing parents with a safe, reliable plan for the next 5 weeks. Every 5 weeks, parents will receive updated facts as it relates to the county alert system regarding COVID-19. During these conversations, parents will have the opportunity to have their children remain virtual or transition into a blended plan. Please note, this transitional option could only be incorporated if Hamilton County is showing that the spread of COVID-19 is beginning to diminish. Data would be provided from the CDC as well as the county alert levels document. Students and parents would have to make a written commitment to the virtual or blended model, both which have been approved by the school board at its regular meeting on July 27th. During this time, parents will be expected to maintain the selected option for a minimum of 10 weeks. Please note, there may be extenuating circumstances for requesting a change. The request must be made in writing. The 10-week process will be used in order for teachers to adequately evaluate each student's academic progress. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And I guess the last person with comments would be myself, and I'm going to piggyback on what everybody has said. I'm going to try not to make this long because I've already asked people not to make it long, but I just, in looking at this, what you just read, and looking at what the teachers and the administration has done, I just think that you have done an amazing job with readying yourself and handling the COVID-19 pandemic and the ability to pivot to plans that are viable plans. I just think that we one thing about the Warrior Nation, at the end of the day, despite distractions, that has always been something that I have done from my advocacy work before I became on the board. And as I'm looking at the new administrators and the teachers in, you know, keeping the students in plain sight has always been something that have helped us be able to pivot and adjust. And thank you, Mr. Smith, for your leadership on that, and Mr. Seymour, when we were getting cuts from the state, and who knows, we may get more. But thank you for your leadership in those areas. And I think it's a testament to a solid system, and there's some systems that struggle, but Winton Woods has done a great job, so thank you all. And I'm gonna end with saying welcome back to everyone, and we're looking forward to a great year. So we'll go on to item 13.01, Board, there is not a need for an executive session. With that said, item number 1401, I would like to call this meeting of the Winton Woods City School District Board of Education regular meeting on Monday, August 24th, 2020 adjourned. Thank you.